So big welcome to everybody, to our speaker, and over to Carly now.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. A particular hello to Lord Mayor Sally Capp. Thank you, Sally, for so graciously sharing your time and expertise with us. We really appreciate it. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces online, women who've just done the equip or joining us in our masterclasses and other in conversations. It's always wonderful to see you. Thank you for supporting us. I would first like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay respects to the past, present and emerging elders. I honour and acknowledge the strength and resilience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women with whom I stand in solidarity, and acknowledge that sovereignty of this land was never ceded. You're welcome to tell us in the chat what traditional land you are zooming in from. But for now, I'd love to introduce our woman of the hour, Lord Mayor Sally Capp, who began her career as a solicitor before she decided to run for the role of Lord Mayor of Melbourne. She is the first woman to ever be directly elected as Melbourne Lord Mayor after being elected in 2018 and again in 2020. Sally was also the first woman to hold the post of Agent General, AG, for Victoria in the UK, Europe and Israel. And in 2014, as a passionate Collingwood Football Club supporter, Sally made history as the first female board member of Collingwood Football Club. And I am a fellow Melburnian, so I know what that means. That's probably the most fantastic thing on her resume for a Melburnian. So there are lots of firsts for Sally. And Sally has stated that as Lord Mayor, her top priority is bringing the buzz back to Melbourne and driving the city's economic recovery following the devastation caused by COVID. Sally is also extremely committed to helping rough sleepers get more support and access a pathway to secure housing. And she also wants to ensure that Melbourne remains a global leader in environmental sustainability. So we have quite a woman here to listen to today who has worn many hats. Now, if you have any questions regarding for Sally as the conversation progresses, please put them in the chat and I will leave them at the end of the session to ask Sally. So let's get going. So Sally, before we talk about your experience as Lord Mayor of Melbourne, I'd like to discuss the lead up to you getting elected. Would you say you were always interested in politics? Did you have an experience in politics before you decided to run? And what was it that made you want to get involved?
Well, Carly, thank you for having me. And hello, everybody. It's lovely to be part of this forum today. And I am joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people and pay respects to elders past and present. And I love seeing the banter already in the chat room. And there's nothing like a bit of football rivalry to really get everybody revved up. It's awesome. I am so happy to be part of this forum to share my story, but in doing so really with that aim of encouraging more women to step over the barriers and the fears and the I think some of the turn-offs of politics and really focus on what can be an incredibly rewarding and satisfying and purposeful part of your lives. So thank you for having me so I can join the bandwagon, Carly and Lesia. I am not the traditional politician, I guess you would say, but let me go back a little bit, because when I was younger, my uncle married a lady named Ros Kelly, who was one of the first women federal members of Parliament, the first one that had a baby during, her term, not just as an MP, but a minister, and did lots of firsts. And she was incredibly inspiring to me. Not that I, at that time, thought about that in the sense of politics, because whilst I'm interested in politics, I was never interested in being part of politics. Very much a private sector person, felt that, I could create change and pursue my career ambitions very much in the private sector, which is a reflection really of my upbringing, as inspired as I was by Ros. And the other element, I guess, about me is that I'm a serial career changer. I call myself a millennial before my time. I think I've had about 9 career changes so far, still plenty to go. And I do think that really has helped me jump into local government from a background that's quite different to local government. But there were some common themes as well, and I think it's always helpful to find those when you're looking at making jumps into something new, because they do provide you with a bit of a platform in a sea of uncertainty. And for me, you know, I'd been the CEO of the Committee for Melbourne, so really understanding Melbourne issues, policy making, interacting with levels of government, and really galvanising people around common goals. I'd also been, you mentioned the Agent General for Victoria. So I was representing Victoria overseas. I call it head of sales. I'm head of sales for Melbourne now. And I certainly, again, came to understand some of the workings of state government. I was a long way away from the mothership in that role, but that sense of representation, as well as an understanding of all of the work that goes into programs and projects, and the way government works, was something that I'd seen in that role. So there were some times that I'd touched on this, albeit that I hadn't been in politics myself.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There's so many different ways to enter politics. You know, some are staffers, some are like yourself, where they take positions in government and then enter that way. So it's very important for all the women to understand that there are different avenues in, and it doesn't have to be a traditional avenue working your way up through a party, for instance. Yeah. Great. So next I wanted to ask you, how did you initially become interested in the job of Lord Mayor? Because it is not, you know, it's not a job that most people focus on. Yeah. Were you approached to run? Did you put your hand up? Why did you choose to run as an independent?
Yes, okay. Well, there's a lot in that. Thank you. I'll start by saying that I hadn't ever contemplated being an elected representative. So, and it is very different to so many other roles that I've had. In fact, all of my other roles, including the ones I mentioned earlier, you know, you turn up for an interview with a panel of rational people and you have a discussion about skills and values. And you walk away and you know, there's a whole process that's very rational around it. I've come to understand that standing as an elected representative is very, very different, can be very scary, but worthwhile. And one of those elements is that there come times in all of our lives when we have, you know, I guess you might call them sliding door moments, or times when you feel really triggered by something that piques your interest or your passion. And for me, that really happened as a very proud Melburnian as sexual harassment allegations unfolded at Town Hall, and the impact of the way people regarded both the organisation that's the City of Melbourne, but also the place that is Melbourne. And I found it really triggered me. I felt very motivated to get involved. Initially, that motivation was to encourage other people to put their hand up for what was going to be potentially a by-election. And then I had a coffee with somebody who said, you know, you're so passionate about this and finding someone appropriate. Why aren't you considering doing it? And that started a whole chain of events for me. So I think looking out for your own internal triggers, but also if somebody else doesn't ask you that question, ask yourself that question, because I'd ruled out of my career being an elected representative, and I shouldn't have, because really the way I've felt about wanting to be part of change and leading change and feeling that I could make a difference being an elected representative is a brilliant avenue for that. And I've found it much more satisfying for those in those realms than roles I've had in the private sector. So I think look out for your own personal triggers, but also listen to others who are encouraging you. And you'll need both, because frankly, in the really tough times, you need to know you've got that driving passion inside you, that sense of purpose and wanting to make a difference pushes you through some of those more difficult times. And also having a network where you can rely on their advice and they give you reality checks, but they're also there for support and encouragement is important as well. I think I've forgotten the last part of
the last part is, why did you choose to run as an independent?
Yeah. Well, actually, this was a really important bit for me, because one of the reasons why I'd never wanted to be an elected representative is because I didn't want to have to join a party. And I didn't want to, because I'm somebody that is more focused on sort of the outcomes, and I'm a big sort of collaborator. I love team and teamwork. And so for me, it doesn't matter who thought of the idea or whose platform it on. If it's a good idea, let's just do it. And that, when I had been in environments, and, you know, I grew up in these debates, my parents, very staunch Liberals, my uncle and of course Aunt Ros, very staunch Labor. And we would have such explosive family dinner table debates about tax reform that we'd have to separate and leave. You know, it was that sort of environment. And I loved the stimulation of the debate, but I really didn't like the entrenched positions. It just created so much unnecessary aggression. Having said that, I do understand the roles of the major parties, and I do understand that you can't be the Prime Minister or the Premier if you're not part of a major party. And as we're seeing with some of our parties at the moment and the way they evolve, they absolutely have to have wonderful, committed people as part of them to create the change and make sure that our major parties do reflect modern values and future aspirations and all of those things. So I fully respect everybody who joins a party and looks to create change that way. For me, my change is very much outcome focused. I'm an action oriented person. And so the independent way was better for me, because I didn't want to have to try to, it wasn't in my mindset to rationalise the acceptance of an entire political platform, particularly at local government level. I haven't considered the others. I was motivated by a particular set of circumstances. And being Lord Mayor in local government, you know, I could be a leader as an independent and lead in this environment. So I've gone all over the place with that question, because I can see things from both sides. And by the way, there are lots of pros to being an independent, like you can do your own policies and be focused on outcomes. But I tell you what, it is a lot harder when you're an independent and you don't have the party support behind you and guidance and wisdom and resources and just rat cunning as well. You know, all of those things that parties bring with them, and just having a team, you know, that's really nice. Something I've really missed early on was that sense of colleagues and support in that political realm. So I really get the benefits of being part of a party.
I think you touched on something very important, and if many of the women here have already done the Equip course with Ruth McGowan and Licia, and Ruth always talks about know your purpose, have it in 25 words or less. This is what will sustain you. This is what your message is. This is how you'll be remembered. So that's a very important point, and it's really great to hear someone with your wealth of experience and in the position that you are talk about that and how valuable it is. And also at my kitchen table, we still do, we have big discussions around refugees and the role of government. And I have also stormed out of my house. So I definitely appreciate where you're coming from. In an article in The Age, when you first took office, you hope that your new position will remind your niece and young women that the old gender rules no longer applied like they had. What did you mean by this?
Yeah, you actually just gave me a few little shivers there, reflecting back on that. I absolutely think we have to identify and support that gender-related roles is gone, and we have a responsibility. You know, today everyone's celebrating the first female CEO of a supermarket. Oh my gosh, why has it taken so long? And we need to celebrate those, but we need to move forward with an assumption as well, particularly for the generations that come behind us, so that those, you know, first become second, third, and fourth, and it's no longer a big deal. When I've got a number of nieces, but one niece in particular who came to my swearing in, her natural response in talking about a Lord Mayor was to say him and he. When she came into my office here at Town Hall, which I've changed dramatically, but there were 5 portraits of former mayors looking down at me, you know, with beards and stern, serious looks. And everywhere there's a sense of the maleness. In fact, we had a big discussion here about whether I should have the title Lord Mayor. And again, I can see the pros and cons, but for me, taking gender out of the title and the role was really important. So I went ahead with Lord Mayor rather than Lady Mayoress. You know, that's the sort of debate that, well, the thing that was put to me when I started. And I'm surprised at how many people still tell me, mostly men, that I shouldn't call myself Lord Mayor. I think really every time we're in these circumstances that we recognise, celebrate, but push forward that this is the normal and that this is what we should expect in life, is that women fill these roles and so many more. And I think that really helps build that momentum and confidence towards more women putting their hand up, which is what we're talking about election. I mean, it's never been more obvious to me how scary it is to put your hand up for something than when you're running for public office. But that's exactly what we've got to do. A lot of other barriers and systems we've got to break down, you know, the glass ceiling, etc. But if we don't have women putting their hand up, we're never going to get through those barriers. So for me, what you're doing, Carly, with these sorts of programs is absolutely vital, encouraging women to put their hand up.
Thank you so much for your support. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I hope to get to a stage where we don't need to exist anymore. That there is,
nice, I like it.
There is parity. I mean, I don't want to put myself out of a wonderful job, but for the betterment of society, that's what I hope. Yeah,
exactly.
So we find that the Australian public is very well informed about the negatives of going into politics, some of the things that you just discussed earlier. And the reason why we run these interviews is to highlight the positives that can come from more people representing the communities they live in via politics. Can you give us some examples of how your involvement in politics has provided benefits for your community?
Oh, gosh. It's actually really humbling for me to say that it happens almost every day in so many ways. But I mean, my approach, style, leadership, priorities are so chalk and cheese with the previous Lord Mayor in so many ways. And that really provides a big contrast for people in our community. So that's why it often comes up, because people are reflecting on this. But I think, and there are lots of, again, lots of reasons why this happens, but I think being the first woman directly elected into this role already signals change. My leadership style is firstly that I don't accept the status quo. I'm somebody that loves to really challenge status quo, and I'm very comfortable therefore with change. I'm also somebody that is welcoming. I mean, it's beyond that. I work really hard for Melbourne to be a place where everybody feels a sense of belonging. It's for me, in the experiences I've had from you know, my first job as a young lawyer, knowing what it feels like to be on the outer, to be excluded, to feel isolated, to feel helpless, They are horrible feelings, and there are people in our community having those feelings every day, whether they're new migrants or they're struggling with their sexuality or they're being discriminated against for some reason. And I think the role of leaders is to make sure that we are opening gates and pushing through to ensure that more and more people do not have to experience those types of circumstances. And the great thing about local government is that's what we're involved in every day. We are the level of government closest to community. And it could be the littlest of things. I went to speak at a Muslim youth parliament that we actually hosted here together with the Islamic Council of Victoria. A lot of young women in that program and young men. And just the sense that they could come into town hall to talk about their aspirations and how to go about it in an environment that previously they might have thought that they could never belong or even be in was a great revelation to them. You know, there's that confidence building and that gate opening so that they set new aspirations and new goals for the future. For me, that's very much of what we're doing all day, every day. And it comes in big things like last year we had the big debate about the 26th of January here at Town Hall. And it's through to little things on, you know, changing the hours of operation in our rec centres so that women can have some women-only time at certain parts of the day. All of these things make a big difference to really creating positive change in our community. And it's a major driver for me in terms of purpose.
That's wonderful. I really hear you on that. And we talk a lot about at Women for Election, the fact that we need more lived diverse experience in our leadership so that the policies and laws that are made reflect what is needed on the ground. And I think a very simple thing, like you mentioned, just changing the rec hours so that women could have some women-only time. A male Lord Mayor would never enter his stratosphere to think like that. So it's really...
And Carly, it's everything. I went to the Sudanese National Day Festival a couple of weekends ago, and a young Sudanese boy who wants to play soccer for Australia, of course, he couldn't believe I was the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. He said, well, if you can do that, then maybe I can do what I want to do. You know, it comes in all shapes. If you're not the square peg, then for everybody else who's around peg, you can make a difference. And it's actually a responsibility. And I think if you get into leadership roles, it's an obligation. It really is to make sure that we're driving that change.
I love that. Thank you for that, Sally. So what doors have been open to you that you didn't expect since becoming Lord Mayor of Melbourne?
Oh, well, I love knocking on people's doors. It actually started in the campaign for me in 2018, where I didn't actually know much about local government and how, you know, the breadth and depth of the things we're involved in. So I just started knocking on people's doors. I remember writing to the Chief of Staff for the Police Commissioner thinking, oh, there's no way the Police Commissioner will take time to talk to a candidate in a local government election. And lo and behold, 2 days later, I was sitting in front of the Chief Police Commissioner. There is a lot of respect. I know sometimes it feels there's a lot of derision as well, but a lot of respect for people that represent others and even want to represent others. So the doors that have opened for me from, you know, the lodge in Canberra, the Premier's office here, so at political levels. Also, whenever I'm travelling, I always see if I can get in to see people overseas, whether it's the Mayor of LA, for example, or Paris, see what I do, through to our Consul Generals and Ambassadors, etc., overseas. But more importantly, I think, you know, if something matters to our community, and I can play a role by knocking on a door or pushing a door open, I never hesitate to jump on the phone. In fact, one of my tasks for this afternoon is to ring the CEO of Telstra, who I've never spoken to before, and she's relatively new in the role, and talk to her about a local issue I've got here in Melbourne. She probably doesn't even know about it, but it doesn't matter. I'm the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. I represent our people, and I'm going to call or see whoever it takes to make that happen. And sometimes you've got to knock on that door over and over again. And it's scary sometimes. Please don't get me wrong. I do take deep breaths and get nervous and perspire and stuff as well. But I think that sense of really representing the interests and good outcomes for my community, it emboldens me to kick down doors.
Yeah, I totally agree, Sally. Lisa Turner, who's on the call, wrote that your sense of purpose is so inspiring. And I think it goes back to what Ruth and Licia keep hounding into all our alumni and equip attendees, like have your sense of purpose. That will sustain you when you're nervous, when you're scared,
Yes.
when you're not sure.
Exactly.
And it will give you the impetus and the confidence to move forward, knowing that you're moving forward for a good reason.
And I often think to myself, Carly, you know, a lot of these situations, they're not about me. You know, and sometimes people get so caught up in the me of it. It's actually not about me. It's about what I can do for others. And it's quite nice. I use that actually as a way of helping calm my nerves, because we get so caught up in our own, what we perceive as our strengths and weaknesses, you know, the little voice in your head that's talking yourself down. And I really use it to say to myself, hey, Sal, it's not about you. It's not about what you look like or what you sound like. It's about the people you represent and the messages and tasks you've been given to do. And that really helps center and focus me.
Yeah, that's a great technique. It can also be used when you're trying to fundraise.
Yes. Oh, it's the worst. Second worst.
Second, yeah. What's the worst?
I think the worst is very much the public scrutiny and public sense that they can do or say whatever they want to you simply because you've put yourself up for public election. It was really the first big shock to me as I went into the first Meet the Candidate night in 2018. I went in like a puppy dog, eyes bright and ears up and tail wagging, so excited to meet people and talk to them about issues that were important to them and ideas that I had. And I got completely slapped down, you know, in the first instance. And the shock of the aggression and nastiness and how personal people can be when they don't even know you, that it's ongoing. I mean, you know, I just peek in my emails each morning or social media to get a bit of a barometer of what people are interested in, but it can be really tough. In fact, I saw that our head of security yesterday at an event, and he said, oh, I hope you're not worried about those current threats. And I thought, oh my gosh, my team is so wonderful. They've actually grabbed a current threat out of my mail and given it to the security team and not told me. Obviously, I don't need to know about it at this stage, but that stuff happens all day, every day, and it's the horrible part. Luckily, all the other stuff, great stuff, outweighs it, but you've got to be a realist, and really that sense of resolve and purpose you talk about. But, you know, my skin's just got thicker and thicker and thicker because you have to really be able to deflect so much of that stuff. But asking for money is the second worst thing. It's asking people to back you and your dream and aspiration. And it's, I mean, I've been head of sales for things before, like, you know, financial products or investing in Victoria or projects, but investing in me, you know, that's where you've really got to have a sense of how you're going to make a difference and why people should back you.
100%. We talk a lot in our Equip programs about how to defend yourself and prevent taking on board a lot of the negativity that can come from putting yourself out there as a public figure. And I think we all know that women probably receive, you know, the brunt of that kind of misogyny and nitpicking more so than male leaders. It's not that they don't, but again, it's not a reason not to run, and it's a very small part of the deep
overall,
and sustainable and long-term change that women can make. But it does lead us perfectly into our next question, which is, throughout your career in your personal life, have you experienced gaslighting and negativity? So we know the answer is yes. But what we really want to know, Sally, is what are your best comebacks and responses?
Oh, okay. Look, I've got a couple that probably three that I really keep uppermost in my mind. I've had, in that first session of Meet the Candidate, there was a person in the audience who basically sat like that. I don't know if you can see it, middle finger up the entire way through, and just stared at me the entire way, really to put me off my game. And it was so, I was going to say passive aggressive, just so aggressive. And that sort of thing happens, you know, in different forms all the time. And it's important, therefore, that you've really thought about what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's important to you, because you do need that sense of resolve, as we just talked about, to get you through those moments. And the fact is, I use, you know, Eleanor Roosevelt said, you've got to do what you believe is right in your heart, because whatever you do, you're going to get criticised. Somebody's going to criticise you. And in politics, that's par for the course. You know, you've got to be up for that. So I think, you know, that's the first bit. Anticipate it, expect it, but be prepared by really having that strong North Star there. The second thing I'm very conscious of is that if people are there, or they're in the debate, or they're writing to you, they feel passionate about something. And that's why I do have a look in my emails and social media. I look for the issues, even if people are being extremely nasty. What are they writing to me about? What is that topic? Because that's important. The way they do it, I don't condone or accept. But the fact is, there's a passion and it's feedback and it's involvement, and I don't want to be too Pollyanna-ish here, but the fact is that you know, we can get some sort of use and value out of it by understanding what the issues are. So I try to, you know, guide it into that. So for me, that's really important. And the other thing that I'm doing more of these days, and I try to do this with media as well, and situations where people are really trying to undermine me. And I actually turn it back on them and I say, what are you scared of on that issue? Why are you being so aggressive and defensive? Why are you reacting in this way to this issue? Because often I just can't even comprehend why they're being so undermining or negative or aggressive. And I think it's more of a reflection of them than me. So I like to ask the question. And it normally is coming from a place of fear, these sorts of actions from other people. So by asking them, what are you scared of in this idea or this change or initiative? And sometimes that reveals some really interesting things as well. Yeah, as I said, I think a lot of the gaslighting and aggression is a reflection of them more than you, but it really does impact you. So having some mechanisms for that mostly are very personal for dealing with it are important.
Oh, that's great advice. That is a fabulous comeback line. What are you scared of? That's great. I have now, that's the end of my questions, but I have some really fantastic questions from the audience. So Shauna has asked, Sally, as a councillor in the City of Sydney, she regularly raises the issue of fully paid councillors, enabling a wider, diverse range of people running for council with our New South Wales local government minister. What are the Victorian views around this, and what are your views personally around enabling a wider, diverse range of people running in local council if they are fully paid and remunerated for the hours that they put in?
Yeah, I think it is a key barrier. So it's a great question and suggestion. It's certainly part of the review that's underway in Victoria at the moment about diversity at local government elections. So same process underway, and they're really starting with gender diversity, knowing that that then opens a lot of gates to other types of representation. And I agree. I think the financial burden is ridiculous. In many cases, whether it's what your workplace says or what the rule says, you can't do both. I mean, immediately there's a financial barrier to being part of a democratic process. There's got to be a better way, and it's the same with the costs of campaigns themselves. It's really OTT. Interestingly, in Victorian state elections, there are now limits on amounts, which is $2,000. And I think that was really to try to limit some candidates having huge pools of funds and others not. I'm not sure it's actually working the way they intended. So re-examining that, but financially empowering people even to put their hand up, I think is really critical before we even look at campaign costs. So I agree with that. And I think it would support a wider range of people putting their hand up.
Fantastic. A great question, Shauna. Thank you for asking. Now we have a question for Dominique. Dominique says that often parties anoint a successor in order to keep the power balance. And as an indie, have you considered your legacy to pass on to another independent like Cathy McGowan to Helen Haynes or Clover Moore to Alex Greenwich? Do you have any idea about the legacy you want to leave and how if you would like to pass it on to another woman?
Yeah, that's lovely. I haven't got to that bit yet in my thinking, but these things take planning. So thanks for the prompt. And I think, at the moment, my real focus has been to get the diversity of representation across councillors. So on my own ticket, for example, that was important, looking at other candidates that I, have worked with since then, and ensuring they're building up their capacity and experience in local government to be able to continue those roles. We've got quite a diverse councillor group here at Town Hall and quite a lot of independents. In fact, 2 who were in parties becoming independent. And and again, not to say that everybody needs to be independent, but I do think it shows that when whatever way or whatever realm you're showing difference, it does inspire other people to have the courage to also follow that in whatever difference that may be. And it can happen within party regimes or through independence. So from my perspective so far, it's been very much about having diversity of representation and then building up capacity of those who are here so that we can, so that I'm adding value in that way. And I think that's been going quite well. But I will thank you for the suggestion, start thinking about some of those legacy issues.
I think it's very interesting. We talk a lot at Women for Election about the fact that, okay, we support and train women to get elected, but what happens once they're in there? And we talk about retention rates and the need to continue to support women once they're in positions of power, particularly in a public position of power within the political realm where, like you said, you can be open, people are open to scrutiny.
Exactly. And look, once you're in, there's so much learning. I'm learning every single day still after almost 5 years. And I think for the people I'm working with, for all of us to put our arms around so that we are lifting, the rising tide floats all boats, is that responsibility to really contribute to capacity building and capability building in others is an important thing, as you've said. What we don't want is for people to come in, have a bad experience and then go again. It's part of that continuing to grow the pie, I guess, to go back to some of my private sector sayings. and that pool of talent and retention is absolutely key, because I do actually, I must say, I have noticed how quickly some people can become disillusioned or disenfranchised once they're in. And then it's not just their personal experience that is impacted, but it's the impact right across everything we're trying to achieve as a group and a community. So I think that's a good call out, and I know you do a lot of that work as well.
Yes, we do. Thank you. So Philippa wants to thank you very much for being so honest and authentic in sharing your journey so far. We all appreciate that. She's wondering, is there something that you were most worried about in putting yourself out there that hasn't really happened? And conversely, has anything happened that you didn't anticipate that has been a pleasant surprise? Would you like me to read the question again?
No, I might start at the end and I'll think of something. I mean, so much has been a surprise. As I said, I really thought I knew Lord Mayor role and local government role, but once you're in, and it'll be the same at state and federal, just the sheer breadth and depth of it can be actually overwhelming. And I often describe my role as exhausting and exhilarating all at the same time. So you need to be open to that. So that was a surprise. In terms of something, if I say to you, actually, on the Myers-Briggs personality spectrum, I come in as an introvert, and it surprises a lot of people. It doesn't surprise me. I'm right near the line, but I fall over into the introvert camp, and I felt confident coming into the role about certain parts. You know, I'm a lawyer. You know, we've got our budget here is about 850 million and assets of 4.5 billion. And, you know, I felt comfortable with all of those bits and getting rules and systems in place, etc. What I didn't think I would be as good at was really the engagement with people because of being an introvert. I have been so delighted and again humbled by the way people welcome you into their homes or their organisations or their environments, and how generous they are with sharing on the basis of deepening understanding and learning from each other and, you know, constantly improving for better. And I've been so surprised at how much energy and interest and capacity I have for sitting in big community group meetings and just listening for hours on end. I actually love it. And I didn't think I would. I don't know, if I wasn't doing this role, how I would satisfy that going forward, to tell you the truth. And it's really delighted me, if I can say that's a whole unknown about myself, and something that I really enjoy and spend a lot of time doing. And I think, and I say to a lot of people who are thinking about going into public office, think about doing local government even as a stepping stone if you've got ambitions for other levels, because it's a great learning place, and the capacity for understanding who you represent, why you're there, and how you can be effective is something you can learn really well when you're at the coalface with community, because those requests are overwhelming. But your ability to get out and actually speak with the people you represent and learn about those issues, and then do a better job in representing them in whatever environments you go into, whether it's other levels of government or private sector or NGOs, or even representing in your own organisation, all of that starts there. So that's been a real learning for me. And I do think, I mean, another call out as well is I've consciously made a decision to do this role full time, because you don't have to as a councillor, and a lot of our councillors are still working full time and doing the councillor role. I made a conscious decision to do this, and in doing that, I want to make the most of every single element, even if it's unpleasant elements of this role. And so for me, it is a 24/7 proposition. And so you sacrifice a lot of your personal stuff in that as well, and really understanding what is your balance and what are the lines you want to draw, and making sure that you've got the confidence to draw those lines around and, demarcate, because, as much as I say it's 24/7, you've got to find some times to replenish and refresh and renew. And we've all got different ways of doing it, but it can be hard to defend those times when you're inundated with that sense of responsibility to community. So being very self-aware around that is important. Is that the sort of thing you had in mind, Carly?
Yes, that is fantastic. I should check with Philippa. Philippa, did she answer your question? Yes, perfect. I think that's great. I think everything you said is very important for women to understand what the role is really like, the challenges, what's possible, what's not possible. So I have a question, because you've inspired me now to ask another question. So considering your positive view now of running in public office and the fact that you didn't, I understand that you received vitriol and that there are, challenges in the role for you. But given the positives that you've experienced, the impact you've made on the community, the personal growth that has come your way, do you see yourself in other public leadership positions? Would you like to enter politics at a federal level, or would you like to lead in a different way?
Yeah, I definitely want to keep taking on public leadership roles. I'm still, of course, very focused here as Lord Mayor, so I haven't lifted my head up too much because we're very much in delivery mode at the moment. And sometimes those thoughts can be distracting as well. But I do know that, there's an intoxicating element to public leadership roles as well. In a good way, and it is that sense of purpose and making a difference. For me, every time I look out the window or walk down the street or talk to somebody or, look at the piles of stuff on my desk, I can see how we can make a difference. And once you can, when you're in roles where you see the difference that goes beyond, what I don't want to seem disrespectful here in any way, but, I used to be highly motivated by reaching my financial goals and getting a bonus at the end of the year. And when I look at the sense of satisfaction I get from this role, it's really hard to balance them. I love this one so much more because it goes to your soul and your values and who you are as a person. And they're both achievements, but they resonate and drive me in different ways. And I think for a lot of people that go into public office, that's true. That's true for them as well. And I don't want to waste an opportunity to make a positive difference if I can. I've successfully, in a very politician way, skirted your question about going to other levels of government. Never say never, I guess, is the other thing. But at the moment, I'm really, as you may have gathered, I absolutely love being the Lord Mayor. It's an honour and it's a joy. And I've become an absolute champion for local government as well.
Oh, well, we are all the better for it, Sally. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one last question, which I think is very interesting. I know that one of the barriers for many women who want to enter public office is how are they going to balance their family life, their personal life, and their public life? So Lisa Turner would like to know, as a full-time counsellor, how do you replenish, refresh, and spend time with your family?
Yeah. And of course, all throughout our careers, it's that balance. And it's the realisation there is no balance. And it changes constantly and it's hard to juggle. For me, though, they say timing is everything as well. For me, I've got two boys. My younger boy had just finished VCE when this came up. And maybe if it had come up during VCE, I might not have even considered it. I don't know, because, you have different priorities. I've worked my entire way through my kids growing up, so they're sort of used to that. But this was a really big sort of plunge, and I don't know if I would have done it in his VCE year. Does that make sense? So there's a reflection for you on balancing. How do I go about it? I've got a very good guilt radar. if I start to feel guilty about something, I address it immediately. So I'm on a number of boards on not-for-profits, for example. If I find that I'm feeling guilty because I'm not giving enough or I'm not getting enough, because you have to have mutuality in these sorts of relationships, then I say, I'm sorry, I've got to move on. If I feel a sense of guilt about my family or friends, then I turn into that and I address it. I don't let it dwell or grow. And I really trust my guilt radar, and it changes at different times. So whatever your refining trigger is, please trust your gut as well. In terms of how I'm starting to balance, I've got to say it's been very extreme the last 3 years. And so what I'm doing this year to really change things up is I'm having more family and friends come with me to events. Previously, I used to receive an invitation and I would just go on my own because I was very focused on what I needed to do when I was there. And what I realized is that, you know, if I take along my partner or a family member or a friend that don't need me by their side the whole time, they get a lot out of these activities as well. Whether it's coming to the Sudan National Day Festival, or it's going to a show, or it's listening to speakers on The Voice here in Town Hall, I've decided to open up all of those activities in a way that I haven't done. And it's actually de-stressing me enormously about not having time with family and friends. And then look, I'm trying this year to spend more time in nature. I find that's very important, and I've got lots of nature in the city. So that's one of my New Year's resolutions. Last year, it was dancing and live music, and I really made the most of that as well. So that gives me a sense of achievement when I set, you know, a New Year's resolution and I deliver on that. So I'm doing lots of parks and waterways this year, and I'm a voracious reader. It takes me away. Even if it's an audio book for 10 minutes, it's taken me out of a situation completely, and I can come back into it with fresh eyes. That's really important. And look, I know we're short of time, but the last thing I was going to say is that, you know, most of us have a thing that we might need to say to ourselves regularly in difficult situations, or remind ourselves of, for a safe space. For me, it's about grabbing a sense of power or control back. I'm an A-type personality. And I've got a saying that I use sometimes more than once a day if things aren't going well, which is Edward Hale, who's a male from the 17th century, unfortunately, not a spunky woman. But the saying is this: I'm only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. So in all those exasperating moments where I feel, deflated or defeated, I just say that to myself, and I realize there are always ways forward. And I look for that positive momentum in my day, even in the tiniest things. And it just gets me going again. And it could just be a little trigger like that, sitting in the women's cubicle for a couple of minutes. Just to take a deep breath and remind myself there are always ways that you can find a step forward, and that really helps me.
I think that's fantastic advice, and I think we should all take our moment in the bathroom to recite that. Sally, it has been an absolute pleasure and a real honour to speak with you. You are incredibly inspiring. Thank you for all the work you do. You're important not only as a role model for all of us, but for the impact that you're making on the ground. So thank you. Everyone give a nice Zoom.
Thank you.
Thank you to
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the provocations I've received today. I love them. And thank you for considering being leaders in the public realm. It makes me excited and confident as well. So thank you very much.
That's wonderful. I just want to quickly plug a few things that we have here. We have a cohort of scholarships. For our next cohort of scholarships, they're about to open via the Women Leading Locally program we're running with the Victorian government. I encourage all of you to go on the call based into Victoria and check it out. The link is in the chat. We also have an In Conversations with Madeline Ogilvie, an MP from Tasmania, who's got a very interesting story because she actually started as a Labor candidate, became an independent, and is now sitting as a Liberal. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation. Yes.
And actually, Carly, what's doubly interesting, it wasn't just as a candidate, she was a Labor MP.
Yes. A Labor MP became an independent. Sorry, you're right. She was an MP. Her grandfather was a Labor MP. So
wow.
it's going to be fascinating. And we also have a masterclass on media and social media on the 15th of March with Charlotte Mortlock and Roger Christie. So keep an eye out on our events pages. I know Licia has sent the link in the chat. I will send it in an email to you all as well. Again, Sally, thank you so much for your support and your incredibly interesting responses. And to all of you for joining us, thank you. We do this for you and also for the betterment of Australia, but we're really grateful that you support us and continue to show up. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Carly.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye,
Yeah.
Licia.
Bye, Lord Mayor.
Bye.